Hello P6. For today's probability lesson, lesson number 3, we are going to be making some probability spinners. And for today's lesson, we'll be using some of the language that we've already used in our previous lessons. So if it helps, go back and look at part 1 and part 2 for our probability lessons. But for a quick recap, we've got words like impossible. Impossible describes something that's definitely not going to happen. We've got certain, where the event is definitely going to happen. If something is described as being an even chance, then there's a half chance that it'll happen. It's as likely to happen as it is not to happen. And then in between those words, we've got less than even, and less than even describes something that is either impossible or very unlikely or unlikely to happen. Or we've got more than even, which describes something that is likely to happen, very likely, or certain to happen. If you need to, go and watch videos 1 and 2 if you need to go over those. For today's lesson, we are going to be making our own probability spinners. And certain games that we play use probability spinners to help us decide maybe whose turn it is or how many points you get. So we today are going to be making our very own probability spinners. So here's one that I've made. I'm going to give it a spin. Oh, that was a bit rubbish. We'll try that again. Ooh, and it's landed on red this time. Second spin, and this time it's landed on, it's gone for red again. Now, this probability spinner, let's take a closer look at it. We can see that it's been split up into two colours. So it's got red and it's got blue. How many red sections are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red sections. How many blue? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue. So 5 red, 5 blue. So that tells me there's 10 sections altogether. So what I could do is I could write down each of those as a fraction. I could say that 5 out of the 10 sections of my probability spinner are red, and 5 out of 10, or 5/10, is blue. Now, what does that tell me about the probability that it's going to land on either red or blue? Well, I can see each of the sections is the same size. There might be 2 beside each other that are the same colour, but each of the 10 sections are the same size as each other. And if 5 out of the 10 of them are red, well, what I could do is I could take that 5/10 and I could simplify it. And I could say to myself, well, okay, what can I divide 5 and 10 both by? I can divide both of those by 5. And when I divide them both by 5, I'm going to get the fraction 1/2, because we know that 5/10 is equivalent to 1/2. And we know now in probability that 1/2 is also known as an even chance. So I could say for red that I have an even chance of landing on red. Blue, it's exactly the same chance, isn't it? Because it's also 5 out of 10, 5/10. So the chance of landing on blue with this spinner is also an even chance. I'm as likely to land on red as I am to land on blue in this spinner. This spinner is actually what we would call a fair spinner. If there were 2 people playing a game and one of them had red and one of them had blue, they've got an equal chance of landing on their colour. So this would be a fair spinner. Not all spinners are fair. Let's take a different spinner. So this time, let's go to this spinner. Take a look. What do you see? Well, in this triangular spinner, I can see that I've got 2 colours, but I've got 3 sections. 3 sections, 2 of them are green and 1 of them is yellow. So 2 out of the 3, 2/3 of it, is green. And 1/3 of this probability spinner is yellow. Now, what could we say about this probability spinner in terms of probability words? Well, if 2 out of the 3 sections are green, that's more than even. So it's going to lie somewhere within this zone. The chance of landing on green is more than even. So we're going to use, for this one, the word likely. We could say that this probability spinner is likely to land on green. What's the chance that I'm going to land on yellow? Well, it's only 1 out of the 3 sections, so it's going to be less than even, and I think we would use the word unlikely. We're unlikely to land on yellow. It's not as good a chance. It's a less than half chance. Let's take a third probability spinner, and this time Let's go for this probability spinner. So this time I've got a slightly more sections. So let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 sections in this spinner. Look at the colours. Well, I've got 4 out of the 8 are red. So 4/8 are red. And I can see that 3 out of the 8 are white. And I can then see that 1 out of the 8 is green. I wonder which probability words we could use to describe the chance of landing on each of these colours. Well, if I look at the red, well, 4/8, I could simplify that, couldn't I? 4/8 is the same as 1/2, because if I divide both the numerator and the denominator by 4, I'm going to get 1/2. So which word means there's a half chance? Of course, it's an even chance. So for this spinner, there is an even chance of landing on red. What's the chance of landing on white? Well, I've got 3 out of the 8, so that's less than half, because 4 out of 8 is half, so 3 out of 8 is less than half, so it's going to be less than even. It's still a reasonable chance, so I think we'll use the word unlikely for white. We're unlikely to land on white. What's the chance of landing on green? Well, it's not a great chance, is it? It's not impossible. There is a chance that it could happen, but it's not a great chance. So which word would you use? I think I would go for very unlikely. I think we could say for this probability spinner that it's very unlikely to land on green. So if you had this probability spinner for your game and the colour you were allocated was green, I don't think you'd be very happy, because the chance of landing on green is very unlikely. Let's go to a 4th probability spinner, and this time let's go for this one. So I have got 4 sections, so each of my colours is out of 4, and I can see that 3 out of the 4 are yellow, so 3/4 of it is yellow, and only 1 out of the 4 is blue. 1/4 of this spinner is blue. What probability words am I going to use to describe the chance for each colour here? Well, yellow, 3/4, so it's more than a half chance. It's more than an even chance. I think we would probably use the word likely. We're likely to land on yellow. And of course then we're going to be unlikely to land on blue. We don't have as much chance of landing on blue. It's less than half a chance. We could even change those if we wanted to be fancy, and we could give those probability chances even as a percentage. We could say there's a 75% chance of landing on yellow, because we know that 3/4 is the same as 75%. Or we could say that there's a 25% chance of landing on blue, because 1 out of the 4 sections is blue. Let's go to one final probability spinner. And for this last one, we're going to look at this spinner. Now, what do you notice about this one? Well, I can see that actually there are 4 sections, and all 4 of them are green. 4 out of the 4 sections are green. So that means that the whole thing is green. The whole shape is green. So what's the chance that if I spin this spinner, I'm going to land on green? You're right, it's certain. It's definitely going to happen. There's no chance that I won't land on green. It's definitely going to be green. So we could say that this spinner, it's certain that I'm going to land on green. If you said to me, well, what's the chance of landing on red? Well, what is the chance of landing on red with this spinner? It's impossible, isn't it? If I picked any colour other than green, it would be impossible to land on it using this spinner. Now, piece 6, for your task today, you are going to be doing some colouring of your own. We are going to be thinking today about making our very own spinners, and we're still going to be using the same probability words that we've already been using, words like impossible, even chance, certain, unlikely, likely, and so on. So what you're going to do today is you need to get your own colours. Get your twistables or your felt tips or your colouring pencils. If you haven't got certain colours, that's okay. Just write the name of the colour inside the different sections of each spinner. because what you're going to do today is colour your spinners to match each of the statements that we have sitting right above them. Now, all of your spinners are the same shapes. They're all hexagons, and each of them is divided into 6 separate parts. And what you need to do today is colour your spinners to match the statement. So in statement number 1, if it says it's likely to point to green, well, we know that likely is a more than even chance. So more than half of it has to be green. And I would say we'd probably go for 4 out of the 6 sections will end up being green. So colour 4 out of the 6 green. For the final 2, don't just leave them white. You might leave one of them white perhaps, and maybe you do a pink one or a yellow one, or you might do 2 yellow or 2 blue, whatever you want. But 4 out of the 6 are going to be green because then it's likely to point to green. What about in this one? Certain to point to blue. Well, certain, as we know, means it's definitely going to happen. So if it's certain to point to blue, what we need to do is make sure we colour the whole thing in blue. Every one of those 6 sections needs to be coloured in with blue. In your third one, very unlikely to point to yellow. Well, if something's very unlikely, it's only got a very small chance of happening. It's not impossible, but there's only a small chance that it will happen. So out of your 6 sections, probably one of them is going to be yellow, and then you choose what you're going to do with the others. You might do 1 yellow and you might do 5 red, or you might do 1 yellow, 2 red, 2 blue, 1 green. It doesn't matter what happens to the other colours as long as it's very unlikely to point to yellow. And then P6, you keep going and you have a go at all of the 12 questions on your page. Please be careful, read the statement really carefully. Good luck.